Hello once again everyone, and welcome back to Getting More Out of the Zettel. Now this is a re-record and a re-upload because my camera did not focus. It's hopefully focusing now. The first time we did this, so once again, after a long sweaty day of training, is Eric and me, and we're going to go ahead and start covering the Zwerch if they are weak. So, quick reminder of where we were before. We did the Zwerch if they were strong, so strong bind that we chucked off and cut, and then we also had the idea of the Duplirin. This case can come into two contexts. So what we're talking about is we're still from same setup, but there's either he's tipped up and I just almost got it, and what that would kind of look like is this. I'm so close, but I'm at the point I can't force the Zwerch anymore, and I can't really set up a thrust or things like that. So that's one context for him being weak that these will work from. The other context is kind of a fun pet theory of mine, which is when someone goes into Ox after parrying, this makes them weak in a way that most people don't think about. So weak here doesn't mean this. This is strong, right? Weak here means that he has no leverage here anymore. Not nearly as much as just lower your hands down again, right? Back to long arm. He's got a lot more pressure here. By going up and letting this tip be able to be dropped, he is now weak in the center line. And that will actually impact the way this works. They both work regardless, but that in particular can be a very interesting way of doing it. Either way though, our setup is still the exact same, and I have a couple different things I can do off here. So first, I step up, he overs, I Zwerch, and I get super close to winning. What I'm going to do for my first action is I'm going to press in from here, keeping my right foot forward. So I press to get the sword onto his neck, and I'm able to do that because he was weak, which wedges his tip out to the side. From here, I'm going to execute a throw. Now, what you'll generally want to do here is you get this press to here, and at the same, as it's locking into his neck would be when you step up. You want to make sure that your tip isn't relaxing past. It's continuing to push over his shoulder, which gets his neck starting to go. And then finally, you just hook that leg in there, and he will go onto his back. Just a simple little outer read. You can also get this as they adjust, so let's have you take one step forward. Again, he overs my Zwerch. I push in, right? And I'm getting him to start to rebound, and I fish for him and get him as he's doing that little step. This is not going to be a terribly deep read. It's going to be just kind of almost a trip as he goes into it and is pushed away from my body. That's the first option, and also the thing that will lead into the counter. We'll get to that again in a second. You can still achieve this if he's going up into Ox. It makes the exact same weakness, and I'm still safe from where his sword may be. Let's switch sides real quick, do that again, and then we'll talk about the Ox version, and also the follow-up option. So, he overs, I Zwerch, I get into there, I push, hook. And again, all you would do is keep your tip down to the floor. He would go flat onto his back. Now, let's switch in. The other option we have from here is to instead perform a Mutirin. Now this works really well if by going weak at the sword means he's going up into Ox. And in particular, this also can build very well off of something we already did. So, let's say for example, he's overing, I Zwerch, he parries semi-strongly first, right? I start my Duplirin or start a Duplirin-like motion or any sort of stimulus on this side of his blade that makes him think I'm going to hunt that opening. The counter to that is to go up into Ox, right? If I try to do a Duplirin, he just saved himself. So when I start my motion, he preempts going into Ox. That makes me now jumping into the Mutirin much easier. Reason being is because by making himself weak in the middle, I just adjust back and I can plunge right over. So we'll show that again kind of slowly. He's overing on Zwerch, boom. I start my Mutirin, he starts to raise. I just step my body to the other side, which widens us out. Then I can just dip over and hit the throat, or I can dip over and hit that low opening. Same idea either way. I find this works particularly well against people that are very familiar with the Duplirin, which, as we are anticipating someone who has the wherewithal to do a guard change, yeah, he's probably anticipating a Duplirin. I mean, I'm not going to do two Zwerchs. We talked about that guy ages ago. But we'll switch sides real quick and then we'll show it. So, once again, he overs, I Zwerch, I start, cool, thank you. And then I get to stick him. Now, of course, if he is tipped straight up in the air, you can still achieve the Mutirin, but it's going to be a lot more work and require him to be kind of running away from you to do it. I have had it happen before. I don't find it flows quite as well, which is why I like this, pet Ox transition theory. But either way, if he's weak at the sword, and regardless, you will be able to do both of these. It's the same idea. It's either crush through, which wedges his tip out of the way, or step slightly around, which wedges his tip out of the way, because he can't stop you. Now, we come to the counter. Now the counter for this is the counter against the slice to the neck. We'll talk about the Mutirian in a second. But essentially what happens is, and we'll go ahead and do the tip-up version first. I'm obering, he's Zwerching. I'm weak at the sword, allowing him to push in. So he gets that onto my neck. The first thing I need to do is I'm going to throw my pommel up, and I'm not throwing it straight up. I'm not doing this. That won't save me. I'm throwing it up so that way I pivot his sword over my head and off of my neck. Now, of course, you'd be definitely doing some retreating as you do this, but it's the same sort of idea. As he rushes in, I just invert my sword, and then from here, I'm going to step out with my left leg to get away from his potential Unterzwerch, transition to the thumb grip as I do so, and now I'm in a clear channel to Eric, schnapp into the top of the head, and I can strike him. Now this can happen as you're being pushed backwards. You have a lot of room here to achieve this, and certainly it would be quite a bit of distance. But generally the idea here is as soon as you feel that rush in, pop that up and over your head, and you're pretty much clear. Then just don't stay in the pocket where he can work from. There's actually a motion you'll see a decent amount if you do any sort of like halberd or quarterstaff work. This comes up quite a bit. But here is that again, then we'll talk about the ox, right? So, boom, he comes in, up, snap. Now the other trick here is, don't go to the thumb grip immediately. By letting this hang down, you're giving yourself more space. Then when you transition from the thumb, you'll slip right off his blade. So if we're talking sharps and there was a hard bind, that's a very reliable shape for me to lift and move, and I'll get a nice clean snap. Now, the other thing about this is, let's say I was going into the ox, and he was then putting it on my neck. So I'm cutting down, he does a Zwerch. I'm afraid of it to be clear, and I lift, he pushes it onto my neck. Same exact idea, up and over, snap. It's just not going to be quite as clean, but it's still absolutely doable. Now, the other thing that this can do is that this action can be a counter to Mutirian just as much as it's a counter to the slice of the neck. I don't know if this was necessarily intentional in the Zettel, as they don't mention countering the Mutirian, but this works really well against it. I've talked about this before. It's too good not to discuss. So, let's switch sides on that. The idea here is that for Eric to land the Mutirian, two things must happen. Number one, he needs to get his tip over my blade and aligned with me. Number two, he needs to get himself on the opposite side of it and move forward in a pincer movement. You don't land a Mutirian by extending your arms. That's not how that works. You move up as one piece, which constrains what they are able to do, allowing you to be safe. Because of this, once someone hunts a Mutirian, if the other person isn't coming forward, you do actually have a decent amount of time to kind of step away from this shape. The same way that him pressing onto my neck, he had to get to the point where he could off-balance me to throw me. So, let's go ahead and look at that. I'm obering, he Zwerchs. Boom, I'm afraid of this declearing, so I turn. When he starts to Mutirian, I'm going to use the same action we just did. I'm going to let my blade hang as I step up with my left foot, then I'm just set up for the schnapp into the top of the head. And we personally have done this multiple times, right? We've had Eric chase me actually quite a ways hunting that Mutirian, and I've only at the very end escaped. You have a lot more time than it seems, and as far as he's concerned, he's inclined to keep hunting it. There's no reason for him to transition unless I get that step out of the way, and there's certainly things he can do from there. But this works out very, very well. When they go for the weak of your sword to push it down, let them push it down, step out, pop. Pretty simplistic. Let's go one more time on that. So I'm obering, he's Zwerching. Boom, I'm afraid of declaring. I'm afraid of Mutirian, and I get my snap at the end. We just kind of fall around each other. Switch sides to show that one more time, and then we'll be done. I'm obering, he's Zwerching. I'm afraid of declaring. I'm afraid of Mutirian, and I snap. Now note, you can't jump the gun. When you go up into that ox, you are opening the ability for the Mutirian to happen, but it's not guaranteed to happen. They may instead try to do other things. Your key to do the schnappen, this cover and schnapp, is always going to feel that hard pressure where you're sort of being constrained back into you, which you then frame off of. This is not something that you're going to have happen on purpose. It's not something you want to try and make happen. I really recommend that if you want to cultivate this, next time you're doing step drill or other light exercise, when you encounter this option, and something very slow, try this out, see how it feels, and then you'll naturally build the habit over time, so when you feel that pressure, you will execute the technique. Final detail that I want to discuss is, regardless of whether or not this is the press at the neck or the Meteorian counter, when you snap, always snap to the top of the head with your hands very high. The reason for this is you can absolutely, so let's say I did this, he's going to Meteorian, I can absolutely snap low, and he's not going to like it. The problem is, his sword is low, so it's not hard for him to catch it, or worse, he can just choose to ruin my day. If instead I always make the choice of snapping high to the head, that encourages me to step further away from him, give him something that he has to go up with to deal with, and will also then lead into me being able to exit quite nicely. Always snap high. Especially with the cross-hand side, encourage yourself to go higher, so then when you go on the open-hand side, it's practically a shield help, which is what we'll be tackling soon, but we got more Zwerch stuff to do. Otherwise though, thank you very much, Eric. And thank you all very much for watching, possibly again. Like I said, sorry about that, but hopefully this has covered everything I managed to cover before. Next week, we'll be picking up with some more specific-y things that are in the Zwerch family. Otherwise though, thank you very much for watching. We'll go over some other techniques another time.